Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
Good evening, Ken.
Good evening to the chat room. And I want to welcome everyone to episode 585, Israel's Greatest Curse and the Power of the Feast of Tabernacles. We're streaming live around the world, maybe not North Korea, but everybody else, we're streaming live around the world.
They got VPN, Ken. You're good.
What's that?
They got VPN, yeah.
Yeah. So we got Michael with us and Chris, and as always, my friend on the other end, Dr. Ricks. If you would start us out, that would be wonderful.
Okay, we're going to have just a few quick camping groaners. And by the time I'm finished, you're going to be begging me to go back to Ronald Reagan stories. I guarantee. Okay. What were campers feeling after they had to walk 7 grueling miles up and down hills, hard, rocky trails to get to their campsite? They were feeling the agony of defeat.
Feet.
Of course, defeat is spelled F-E-E-T.
Indeed.
Okay. The camper went to one of those good sporting goods stores to buy a camouflage tent for camping. But he didn't buy one. You know why? Couldn't find it.
Oh, my.
What do bears in the woods call campers that are all zipped up in their sleeping bags? Soft tacos. So what do you call a convict who's escaped and camping in a tent out in the woods? You call him criminal intent. Anyway, so you all heard that great laugh track, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're in for one that I think is really an interesting subject that is overwhelming in the Bible, and that is the horrendous curse that King Jeroboam put on the northern 10. By the way, do you know that a lot of people who think they know the Bible think that there's only one Israel in the Bible?
Yep.
They think they're all Jews. Everything in there is only about the Jews. And that's, well, it just shows a lack of Bible understanding. And
Yeah.
by the way, for those who don't know, you can go to 2 Kings 14, 8, 9. The two nations, Judah and Israel, are at war with each other. But let's look at how Jeroboam cursed the northern 10. By the way, Israel ended up being divided into the northern 10, called Israel, and the southern 3, called the state of Judah.
You know,
Ken, would you go
real
ahead,
quick,
Ken.
most people don't know about the northern 10 tribes, but you know what does know about the northern 10 tribes? AI. I was quizzing the AI, and it gets it all right. It's crazy. AI knows more than most Christians, which is kind of sad. All right, we're going to go to Kings 1, 1 Kings 12. And Jeroboam
12:26.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And Jeroboam said in his heart, now the kingdom may return to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then their heart of this people will turn back to their Lord, Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me and go back to Rehoboam, king of Judah.
The thought that always occurred to me, why didn't he have more faith in God?
No, he didn't. And he was given the promise by the prophet that ripped up the mantle and gave him the 10 pieces and said that he was gonna take those 10 tribes over. All that came to pass. Why so insecure? I mean, this is a very human line of logic. You can think if people get into stay in the custom of going to Jerusalem for the holy days and things like that, that will be seen as the usurper. He's not David's direct descendant or anything like that. So you can see how he would think that, and yet the solution, well, not to get ahead, but the solution that he comes up with is the very reason he got them in the first place. He turned people away from God. Well, the very reason he was given leadership of the northern 10 tribes is because Solomon had turned away from God. So that seems a little self-defeating. I mean, if you think about it.
Yeah, the prophet told him, "You're getting 10 tribes because Solomon has gone into idolatry."
Like most politicians, he didn't want to lose his power.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he would give up anything not to lose that power.
Yep.
Other than pride, maybe to have his people go and worship before God, in the domain of the other king. But that's human reasoning. That's I'm going to do everything I can to claw it out and stay exactly where I am, rather than doing the right thing and trusting that things are going to work out.
I guess all of us have to learn to trust God when maybe a situation doesn't look easy.
Yeah, sometimes that's the hardest part. It's the first place you should go, but for most of the world, it's the last place they go.
Would you read 1 Kings 12:28, please, Ken?
Therefore, the king asked advice, made 2 calves of gold, and said to the people, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Egypt."
My first thought is, it says advice. We don't really know much. A lot of details aren't given. But I'll bet the kind of advisors he had, I'll bet they're like a lot of the politicians like in London and D.C., don't you think?
Absolutely.
Turn away from what's right and do what's expedient. I think it's interesting that he says, "Oh, it's too much. It's such a burden on you," because that's some of the criticism that you hear about the idea of keeping the Sabbath day or of keeping the holy days. It's just God doesn't want you to do that. It's such a burden. Look at all this stuff. You got to get ready and go, and it's this whole thing. Like, what do you need to do that for? It doesn't matter. You just do it wherever. You do it here. Change it. What difference does it make? That's not. It's not right.
That seems like what the current Christians do for the Sabbath, and why we got rid of the 10, you don't have to keep those commandments. Those are old school. You don't need that. And just, it's easier just to go out on your boat on Saturday and do what you want.
And I guess if you really get lazy, you can say, I don't want to have to put on halfway decent clothes, clean up, and go somewhere for an hour or two. Even on Sunday, if I'm saying, I can just stay home and be spiritual here at home. It sounds good, doesn't it?
No. I'm sure
I think that's... Go ahead.
No, I'm fine. You go ahead.
I was going to say, it seems like the end result of their teaching that the Sabbath doesn't matter, that it isn't sacred, it is not a commanded time of rest, because we just do it, we just do it on Sunday because it's our tradition. Well, sometimes we work, and it's more of a principle. You just set one day aside whenever you want, whenever you can get around to it, make a little time for God. Somebody told me that told my wife that actually about the blue laws. Can't buy beer or wine here before noon on Sunday. And my wife was in the checkout line at 11 or something with beer and wine on Sunday morning, and the girl was like, well, you can't. She's like, oh man, that's ridiculous. And the girl was like, well, we have to give some time to God, open to noon on Sunday, like that's enough. Then whatever, that's.
Yeah, you realize dancing and booze are sin. I'm not saying that's true, but that's how the Baptists used to think in the old days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, if I went back to when I was a kid, now we eventually wore Daddy down, but he said you can't play records or dance or play cards because it's the devil's workshop. I know you're laughing, but that's what some Baptists taught.
Mhm.
You went
Oh, yeah.
back far enough.
Yeah.
Playing cards. Can you believe that?
Yep.
In my teen years, I grew up in that church also, and one of my best friends there, she was a girl and she was a year older than me, and her parents would not allow any playing of cards, none. So her and a group of others would come to my house, and guess what we did? We played cards. And I was like, now don't tell anybody, don't let mom and dad know.
Yeah.
You know, that
and
go
not
that
playing
go fish,
record
it's a
players,
slippery
no
slope.
music, no music, no dancing, no playing cards. That's giving God time. But I mean, they don't really understand, but they meant well, I think.
No old
But
maid for you.
See, so many will burden like everything down without realizing they want to say the Sabbath is a burden, but it's the only complete 100% guilt-free. I don't have to do a thing work-wise day. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, we all look forward to it, don't we? Michael said it beforehand. I've looked forward to it all week too. I'm tired. It's nice. I don't have to worry about doing anything for 24 hours. And that's a nice feeling.
And a lot of people don't get that. If you don't take it seriously, then you're tempted to just keep going and keep going and keep going, and then you're in a bad situation, and not just in regards to God, but in regards to your own life and your own well-being. Which, I mean, I know we set it aside because God set it aside because He created everything in 6 days. The seventh day He rested, but like Christ said, it was made for man. You need it. You need the break.
And this idea, it's too much to go up to Jerusalem. By the way, you probably know this, but in those days, everybody did not have to go to the feast. If you couldn't afford it, or you were too sickly or whatever, you didn't have to go every year. Go when you could go, when you're able to go. But changing it and getting rid of it is not the answer.
Yeah.
And saying it's too much. It's like giving God your best is too much. Kind of a bad principle to get into. By the way, also, let's go ahead and read the next verse, Ken, which is 1 Kings 12:32.
Jeroboam ordained a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the feast that was in Judah, and offered sacrifices on the altar. So he did at Bethel, sacrificing to the calves that he had made. And at Bethel he installed the priests of the high places which he had made.
Oh, by the way, some, at least so-called experts, say it was probably a male calf or a young bull, because pagans like bulls, and young bulls would fit the mold better than a calf. But regardless, I'll just say it's probably a young bull. He said, and that's what took us out of Egypt. But notice, he changed it to the 15th day of the 8th month instead of the 7th month. So he told the people, look, I'll give you 2 locations instead of 1. It'll be more convenient. And by changing the date, there's no chance, I don't know, at least not likely, people would bother to go to Jerusalem, because 1 month later, you can go to their 2 sites.
Yeah, and you imagine for people in the far north, the northern one would have been far more convenient for them than going all the way from like Dan way up there all the way down to Jerusalem. Like, it'd be closer for a lot of folks. It's hard to believe that something like this would work, if you will. But things had slipped really far, or we wouldn't be in the situation where Israel had been divided into two separate countries at this point in time anyway. In, let's see, 1 Kings 11 and verse 6, it says, Solomon did evil. Verse 7, he built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and the hill before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon, and likewise did he for his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods. Some of these gods that he's setting up are thought to have been represented by bulls. I looked that up. I read that about Moloch, like with the head of a bull, almost like a centaur type thing, it's thought. And with Chemosh, they thought it could be related to another Mesopotamian one, Nergal, which means bull. Also, this bull worship was a very common and prevalent thing. And when you think maybe that, if that's already going on in Jerusalem, it's not so big of a switch now. Now you're just substituting location rather than, the line has already long since been breached. The people are comfortable with this. I mean, you wonder about what kind of twisted history they were taught about their exodus from Egypt anyway, and the golden calf and all that. How was that regarded at that point in time?
And high places are where a lot of paganism goes on, and hilltops. So he's sort of playing around. I call it a pagan compromise. He didn't exactly say we're worshiping Baal, but we're worshiping the God that took us out of Egypt. But we're changing things. And you should never mess with God's. I'm trying to put it but what word am I thinking of, Ken, when I say you should never mess with God's?
Oh.
I'm thinking of
I don't know, decrees his will. I don't know where you're getting at.
God's structure of setting things up.
Yeah, he set this up.
Undermining, that's the word I'm thinking of. Like you said, his will and his structure. People might think, well, this is easier. But does that mean it's God's will?
It didn't work so good for the Israelites that had to march around the mountain for 40 years. It didn't work out so well for them, Yeah,
it goes against a lot of very specific instructions, about making images, about his holy days and things that you would expect had been, maintained, and yet that's not the case. So much of the time in the history, when you read the history of Israel and through the period of the judges and into the time of the kings and all that, it's not, a well-read, a person who has spent some time in their Bible today, probably knows a lot more than the common man on the ground did at that point in time about their history and about what God, really said and wanted, rather than, this "it doesn't matter" type attitude.
Yep.
They have perverted American history. I heard they did a check of syllabus in colleges, and the new textbooks are even more anti-American, anti-patriotic, a greater distortion. In other words, textbooks in higher ed are getting worse, not better. They're getting worse. Our people and the teachers they train are being taught a perverted American history.
Well, when you let Marxists write the textbooks, I mean, you've seen what's the the Smithsonian or whatever it is, that everything in there was DEI. I mean, from one end to the other, it sounds like the whole thing was absolute garbage. And they wanted to shut. I mean, they've shut it. All the displays and panoramas and all the junk they had in there should have been burned to the ground and start fresh with actual American history. But, it was it's the stuff that I was reading about that was in there was absolute trash. So
I heard somebody who visited
and when someone
the place,
didn't know any better, they believe it's true because it comes from the government.
I listened to someone who visited a few years back. They were shocked at how anti-American most of those museums in D.C. were. They said it was shocking. Like, they twisted everything.
When you put people in charge that hate the country, that's what you get.
That Jeroboam twisted the history of Israel in such a way that a half paganized bull led them out of Egypt. Because they didn't actually see God. They heard his voice, but didn't see him. So, by the way, here's what I think also happened. I think not only did he alter the feast, but he had an effect on all of the fall holy days. He may have just eliminated trumpets in the Day of Atonement, because especially Day of Atonement, that's very much related to the temple in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
At least if they did it the way they're supposed to. You can't keep that holy day without the Holy of Holies in the temple in Jerusalem. So he probably just eliminated those days and focused on his new Feast of Tabernacles.
Yeah, this stuff had been seeping into Israel for a long time. So like Michael said, the leap was not a big leap. It wasn't a big jump from what they had been doing to what they were currently doing.
And the people that it mentions, the people that knew better, the Levites and some others got out of there. They got out of there when this happened, and they went down to Judah to not be part and parcel with it until later on you get to the time of Elijah, and he's not the only righteous person left. God said he reserved 7,000, but he's the only prophet. He's the only person standing in the gap at that point in time against all the prophets of Baal. Like once it goes that far, well then it's just spinning out of control, because what is there to put the brakes on it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it is bad, and it's like they were caught in a spiritual trap. For the 250-year history of the Northern 10 Israel, they never had even one repentant cycle. They never had even one good king. Because you'll read, because you can go to kings that go back and forth, kings of Judah, kings of Israel. And the kings of Judah, they have one or two bad ones and a really good one. Then maybe a good one and not as good one and a bad one or two. And then a good one. And of course, they last 3 generations longer. And they still know who they are. But the Northern 10, it was bad, worse, bad, worst ever, bad. And that was the pattern. There was never a good one.
Yep.
And I think it's because of what Jeroboam put him. That counterfeit religion was a trap, undermining their way back to God, to the real God. Kim, would you like to read the scriptures which show God's reaction to what Jeroboam did? And by the way, there are a ton of them. We only have some of them listed here, only some.
All right, let's see what we got here. 1 Kings 14:16. And he will give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam, who sinned and made Israel sin. And because of the sins of Jeroboam, which he had sinned, and by which he had made Israel sin, because of his provocation, with which he had provoked the Lord God of Israel to anger, insomuch as I lifted you out of the dust and made you ruler over my people Israel, and you have walked in the way of Jeroboam and have made my people Israel sin to provoke me to anger with their sins. And it came to pass, as though it had been a trivial thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took his wife Jezebel and daughter of Ethabel, king of the Sidonians, and he went and served Baal and worshipped him. Is there one more?
One more.
And nevertheless, he persisted in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who had made Israel sin. He did not depart from them.
And it appears right to the very end, the Northern 10 never departed from that bad, counterfeit, pagan religion. And God was outraged. And by the way, these quotes are all the way through the entire history of the Northern 10. As I say, there are a bunch more. We just rattle off some.
Yeah, they got
a whole bunch
Jeroboam's
more.
son after that, and J2, Jeroboam Jr. And yeah, it didn't go well.
And by the way, go ahead, Ken.
Oh, I was going to say that even like what it was a Jehu that was raised up to get rid of Jehoshaphat, to put an end to that, and they cracked down on Baal worship at that point in time. But it's almost like a minor reprise, because there is not any complete turning back to what is right, which as you pointed out, Judah did see occasionally. From time to time, there would be somebody that would send it back in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And even the criticism of Jehu, he did get rid of Baal. God thanked him for that, and for the dynasty that God was disappointed in. But he kept the sins of Jeroboam. He still stayed. God was like, if you could have just got a little further, I would have blessed your dynasty. Wait. You read in there, but they didn't do it. Ken, would you go to 1 Kings 12:31, please?
And he made of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people who were not the sons of Levi.
As you were saying, Michael, the reason that's important is, since printed Bibles were expensive and there are only a few around, and a lot of people couldn't read anyway, a lot of the Bible knowledge was learned by the Levites. Parents taught their kids. Once you get rid of the Levites, it's like getting rid of the Word of God.
Or at least those who have been trained up to it. The people that are supposed to be the keepers of what God wrote and everything. He put them there for a purpose. If they're gone, it's no good. Though, in the initial, when I remember I think it's in Judges, when Dan first sets out on their own, they take a Levite and they make him their priest, and they get him to set up an idol and to worship before it and stuff. So it's not that there can't be corruption inside of that and problems with that as well. The idea that he takes of the lowest of the people, which you have underlined in these notes here. It doesn't imply that he's doing a good thing. It implies that he's picking people who have no moral compass, that'll do whatever you pay them to do and say whatever you pay them to say, and they're just along for the ride and the party that goes along with it, or whatever it may be. Whatever this worship that he set up entailed, and a lot of that was pretty sick and twisted. So who knows exactly what he came up with? It's not a good thing.
I can draw a parallel to some of the senators.
All the money, right?
Yeah, buddy. Everybody that was screaming at Robert Kennedy Jr., every one of them, was on the take from either Monsanto or Pfizer or Kellogg or
all of them.
General Mills, you name it. They were all on the take.
I like when he made one statement. This senator was basically saying, the establishment, the AMA, they're all saying, you should vaccinate children, whatever it was exactly. And you can't be right, and a big organization like them be wrong. He said, Senator, and then he rattled off the statistics of how sick American children have become. Mm-hmm. And you've been here for 25 years or so. You haven't done a thing about it. You haven't said a thing about it. Now all you're doing is to stand up for this. I think RFK Jr. came back at him with embarrassing stuff. I'm sure the media didn't play it that well.
No, they didn't, because I'd seen it, and they didn't. They only played the point that the senators were trying to make, the kind of gotcha stuff. They didn't replay his response.
Yeah, I knew the media. They probably knew that too. The media is going to just edit it to our favor. But I still think it's a somewhat victory for him, because a lot of people don't listen to the media anymore. I hope that's still true.
And a lot of these are issues that go across party lines as well. A lot of the stuff that he's dealing with, it's not it's not as clear cut one way or the other, if you will. It affects a lot of people, and it's affected a lot of people personally, people who want answers and who have become suspicious. And, like after how heavy handed the government got in 2020 and all that, I mean, that put a lot of people on notice, I think, about the way that this is sliding. And, how much trust are you just going to give over, or would you rather make your own decisions?
Yeah, that's a problem. And another part of, if you have priests of the lowest of the people, they're working for the money.
Yeah.
And you wonder, even in today's world, how many clerics are in it only, I'm not saying they don't deserve a decent salary, but how many are in it only for the money?
Probably a very high percentage.
And that, I think, was one of the problems that helped the apostasy of worldwide, was money and salaries. But maybe that's another subject. But people ask, why is the Feast of Tabernacles so important? I think it's important. One big reason, the people got 8 days of teaching. You don't normally get, the way things were set up, 8 days of teaching. They needed those 8 days of teaching. And with people who know what they're supposed to be teaching.
And you think about was it every 7 years the law was supposed to be read in its entirety? The law was supposed to be read aloud in its entirety once every 7 years. That's a good thing to, that's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to implement. There's a lot of knowledge in there. We were talking, I don't remember if it was before the program started or after, about, people getting, you become untethered from your Bible and from the history that's in there. And, not, the idea that there is a difference between Israel and Judah, or that they could be at war, is not even all that well known of a point. You're not just going to just strike off a conversation with Joe Blow who attends church and necessarily get into any of the details of that, or get much more than a blank look. But all of this slide away from the truth and away from what God commands, and into idolatry and into self-worship and whatever it may be, is arrested by staying anchored in the Word. If you're there regularly, if you get this instruction regularly, in 8 days worth at the feast, and of course all the other holy days, that's a lot that can be packed in there. And those are reminders. When you read those words, it is a reminder.
Well, when you look at what Moses said in Deuteronomy 12, if that was read more, look what a reminder. What does he tell them? When you go into the land, don't ask how the pagans worship their gods. Don't worship me in that way, because they make their children pass through the fire and do all kind of abominable things. And how does he end the chapter? Everything that I command you, you shall be careful to do. You shall not add to it or take from it. And that's the biggest thing in it all. We're reading about, what did he do? He took away and added to. Well, no wonder it didn't work. That's not God's design. That's not his instructions. But if we follow those instructions, we would prosper and do well.
And you could say the same thing about the popular religious traditions today that are not rooted in Scripture. They are adding to and they are taking away from what God commanded. They're substituting different things. They're making some stuff up as they go along. How is that? And it's very much exactly like learning. Taking customs that don't come from God and applying them to God. If you stayed in that, you would know. Doesn't matter how good you feel about it or how nice you make it sound. Like, he does not want that.
And when you had good Levites, and that's probably a good deal of the time, actually they had some advantages we don't have. When some of those laws are read in Deuteronomy and other places, they were closer to the reality of the ancient world, and they knew exactly what God told Moses and why it was written the way it was written. I mean, today we understand a lot of it. But sometimes they were closer, so they probably understood it and I can see them explaining, this is why God said you can't do this, this, or this, whatever it was. And I bet you some of those Levites could do a good job, you know. And by the way, people had stronger legs in those days. We're told the teachers sat on a platform, it was a platform, and they sat down with the scrolls in front of them, and they taught, and the people stood up, standing like for an hour or two. I believe this to be true, at least. People walked everywhere most of the time, 3 or 4, 5, 6 miles a day. They had strong legs. People today were weak. You know, you stand up for half an hour, you're screaming and complaining. Right?
I've always thought it was funny that the Bible lists a Sabbath day's journey as being a mile. A mile is a Sabbath day's journey. That's how far you can go when you're resting, people. So if you can't walk that far on a regular day, like it's kind of a general measure there, you know.
Yeah,
I
regular
know
day
people
is
have problems. It's not
2 or
always
3
easy.
miles each way, as Bill Cosby said, and it's uphill both ways.
Both ways, yeah.
Yeah. So that's why the feast is so important. You learn what to do and what not to do and what to repent of. Better than any other time of year. And taught by those lowest of the people, I call it a slippery slope. Like I was watching, well, it's a comedy show, but it made a point. They were talking about this comedian that was arrested in London because 3 months before in America, he had written some memes or whatever it was, making fun of transgender something. And he stopped at Heathport Airport in London. 5 armed guards pounced on him, Heathrow, and they arrested him for hate speech. And they were saying, if we introduce hate speech laws in America, that's going to be the slippery slope. And before you know it, we'll be that bad over here too.
Oh yeah. They're arresting him over there
Graham.
now for hanging their own flag.
Ah, yes.
You can't hang a British flag in Britain or they'll come knock on your door and cart you off.
I don't understand. Who does that offend by? I guess it offends, but who would it offend? Muslims.
There's a new person in London. Some secretary just got elected and she's a Muslim. I forget what she is. Michael might know.
I don't know. Sorry. She newly appointed? I don't
she's
think I've
some
read
newly
it.
appointed person higher up in the government and she's got the hijab on.
Yeah, the liberals are pretty warmed up about it's the white flag, I think, with St. George's cross on it, which I believe is the flag of England, that and the Union Jack. There's been a lot of that because there's been a lot of protests around the area, like in Essex. There was some of the migrants, they're housing them in hotels, and a young girl was sexually assaulted by one of them. And so the people were pretty well sick of it. They were protesting out there. They got the city council to say, no, close this down. Like this, we don't want this happening in our community. And well, it was stayed by a higher court. And that's making a lot of folks that care about that pretty mad. And so you're seeing a lot of these St. George's cross flags and Union Jacks and things like that. I mean, it's really it's really heating people up about, remembering who they are and where they are and how much unfiltered, unassimilated, migration do they really want to have. And it's crazy that it's at the point where it's some horrible like neo-Nazi racist expression to fly your own flag. Like you come pretty far. Or like Grand Lineham, who was arrested. I think what he posted was about it being wrong for transgender people to be in women's only spaces. How that's a violation of their their privacy and so on and so forth. And it's like, oh well, man, you can't do that. You can't tweet about that. That's over the line. That's crazy.
I heard that 30,000 people in Britain are arrested every year for putting something on the internet that's considered offensive to somebody. That's and same thing in Germany, I'm told. That's outrageous. By the way, can you imagine someday if we make that slippery slope mistake, flying an American flag could be considered an offense and get you in trouble?
Yeah.
In Michigan, in Dearborn Heights, the Muslim population has now gone over 50%. And the
Oh,
badges for the police officers now in Dearborn Heights has Muslim writing along with English writing on the police badges.
wow.
I read that it was optional. It was an optional patch that they could wear, but it's, I think, what, like 53% or something, or from the Middle East and from North Africa. And you wonder how many are going to take that up and how many aren't. I mean, it seems disrespectful if you want to come and be part of a country, but you want to keep your own law and language and all that. I don't know. It doesn't seem right. I don't think you would be setting up in English only in Morocco or something like that, and trying to carve out your own little niche there. I don't think that would go over very well. But
No.
somehow it's wrong when people react like, oh, somehow like, oh, it's wrong to want to preserve your your culture intact.
There was a time in this country when they stopped immigration to allow the ones they had brought in to assimilate because they weren't assimilating fast enough. Dr. Ricks probably knows this. I forget what president it was under, but he stopped. He stopped it completely until the ones that they were bringing in so many, he wanted to give them time to assimilate into our society.
It might be Teddy Roosevelt, but I'm not sure. But I know Teddy Roosevelt often said, we don't want all these hyphenated Americans. I understood what he meant by that.
Right.
We got to all be Americans. By the way, and there was a time when, for the most part, people felt that. I'm not saying they were against their ethnic background, but it was secondary to being an American. And that's what it should be. And I think that if hate speech laws are a slippery slope, changing the feast day was a slippery slope for the Northern 10. Once they took that step, and got rid of the guys who knew the Bible, the Levites, and put in the lowest of men, that slippery slope led down, 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 further away from God. See, when we read the Bible, there are a lot of details that aren't given because they're packing, 800 years of Israel's history, whatever, something like that, into so many relatively short books in the Bible. But I know that that a lot went with changing the feast and the fall holy days. I wouldn't be surprised how far they fell.
Nice segue, by the way.
Yeah.
Segue slip that in there real nice and smooth. I like that.
The slippery slope. But I do think the feast is really important to God, more than we think. And I want to mention some scriptures to tell us why it's so, because people say, well, why is this one holy day so important to God? Now, other things are important to God too. So let me make sure I say that, because other times a year we'll be talking about other things. But this seems to be one of the most important things to God when it comes to a nation as a whole, is the Feast of Tabernacles. Ken, would you read Zechariah 14:16?
And it shall be, everyone who is left of all the nations which came up against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And whether you like it or not, and I kind of added that bit at the end, but that's pretty much how it reads, whether you want to or not.
He's going to say that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to say that too.
Yeah, just read a couple more verses, and he tells them they're going to get cursed if they don't come up.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, like one of the first things God's going to force every nation to do is keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And you think, why? But I think I understand, at least in part, because one, you're acknowledging if all the leaders have to go to Jerusalem to keep it, you're acknowledging that's where the leadership of the world is. But most of all, the world needs those teachings.
Yep. There's so much that goes on. It's hard to put into words all the things that take place at a feast site, and to have the whole world be there, it just magnifies the organizationing. I mean, the messaging, the camaraderie. I mean, it's a massive undertaking especially when you start doing this globally all over the world. I mean, there'll be feast sites. I mean, everywhere. I imagine. I don't know if we're going to get the whole world over in Jerusalem or not, but one way or another, it's going to go down.
Here's what I think. I mean, obviously, opinions are opinions. God can do whatever he wants naturally. But if the leaders and leading families have to go to Jerusalem, maybe, and they might rotate some leading families. I'll go this year and you go next year. But if the leaders all have to go to Jerusalem and acknowledge that's the main feast site and that's where the key things are, can you see that maybe they'll have regional feast sites? I'm going to give an opinion. We speculated about technology, but God doesn't have to use technology. Let's say if there's a day during the feast, well, all the regional sites all around the world, whatever their time zone, they get to hear Noah give a sermon of what it was like before the flood and why God condemned the evil world and why we should be different.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be exciting?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think of, or you could get Peter to describe what it was like when they realized Christ was resurrected. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And I assume that they could materialize as regular human beings when they want to, maybe a little bit of glow, but, and then God, it'll be projected on the screen for all the world to see. Wouldn't that be exciting?
Yes.
And their leaders are there, probably in a big giant auditorium or something, watching it in person, but everybody around the world will hear Peter's sermon. And if God chooses not to do that, you know, that's fine too. But think of the possibilities. I think that can be done with technology as it is today, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not far off from holographic. You could actually see them sitting in a table in front of you. We're not far from that, even though they're on the other side of the planet. I mean, we're gonna have not that technology, but we're gonna at least have streaming during the feasts. We're gonna stream from one site to another and things like that. So we'll be doing some of the similar stuff. And we
And
just
then,
got nothing, we got a little bit of, you can do it very, very economically nowadays.
and I could see people saying, well, our regional feast site, here in Upper Michigan was nice, but I want to go to Jerusalem, to the big one, for the whole city of Jerusalem. And maybe once every 10 years they can go, save extra money. And, wouldn't that be exciting?
Oh yeah.
And the whole world celebrating the same holy days and learning what they need to learn, that'll do this world so much good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they're going to be hungry for it at the beginning, except for the leaders that don't want to capitulate. But the people en masse are going to be hungry for it, especially after what they just came out of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, it's said in Zechariah 14:7-18 about God cursing them, but we could pass over that scripture because we kind of know it, that they're going to be in big trouble if they don't keep the feast. I thought we could go to the last scripture, and that's John 7:30-37. And I'm going to give you a backdrop to this scripture. The Pharisees had already decided that Christ was a threat. So he didn't go on the caravans from Galilee down to the feast site like normal, because they had, I guess you call them, temple police looking to arrest him. He came down secretly later, and I guess a secret rendezvous where they couldn't find him. Then all of a sudden, in the last great day, he pops up on stage and starts speaking. And he is so good that when the captain of the guard comes to the Pharisees, they say, well, he was up there. Why didn't you arrest him? The guy said, I never heard a man speak like this in my life. He left them mesmerized. Well, would you read John 7:30, please, Ken?
Sure. Let's pull it up here. All right. Therefore they sought to take him on the last day, that great day of the feast. Jesus stood and cried out, saying, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink.
He elaborated further on that, but I like the term anyone. It's like, isn't Christ saying that the feast will be for anyone and everyone?
Yes. Everyone.
Yep.
And it's going to be one of the wedges that's going to open up the pagan and maybe badly educated but deceived world.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so the feast is very important to God. I want to encourage people to think about coming. We've got some good housing deals at Branson West. It's on the website. And I want to let Michael talk about the feast a little bit in the magazine, if he doesn't mind.
Well, I don't mind that. It's coming up. It's coming up pretty quick here. So if you don't have plans yet for this year, I suppose there's still time. But it's big doings. The feast and the holy days that roll around every year. We plan all year and save, and a lot of people put a lot of time and effort. Like two of these guys here into coordinating feast sites and getting the schedules ready, and making sure there's fun activities and all that. And it's really a particularly special time of the year, which I think was a good subject for this Bible study in the time leading up to it, and certainly look forward to it. And the education that you get there, the reconnection with each other and with the truth and with the Bible and what God ordains and how it factors into His plan. It harks back to the time when Israel was in the wilderness, dwelling in tabernacles, temporary shelters, as we are. We tabernacle in this flesh. Christ said He was going to put off this tabernacle because there's something more waiting, and that's what all the saints are called to. And in these scriptures that we've read, it's a pretty glorious future, and that's what's depicted at this time of year. And to be connected to that, to be refreshed and revitalized and be grounded in that truth, it's a powerful thing. We've got a new issue of 21st Century Watch magazine coming out at some point, sometime. Maybe we'll be done with it next week. It's been crazy around here. So God willing, it'll be in home by the feast, or if not, by the time we get back, maybe we can get boxes there. We'll just see how that goes. Some of that's out of our hands at that point in time, but it's good. It's good. And hopefully we do a good job of having a smattering of articles that have good Bible topics and good current events things, prophetic titles and things like that. Keep in touch with what's going on in the world and keep you grounded in the Word of God, most importantly.
And what websites would you recommend they go to?
Well, anyone will get you to any of one of the other ones. So whichever one's easiest for you to remember, theicg.org is fairly simple. GarnerTedArmstrong.org, and then also 21stCenturyWatch.org, 21ST Century Watch. That's you can get to all of them from those different places. They're all linked together on the bottom, and the Line Upon Line website as well. If you follow back this channel in the description there, you'll get there. It's all very accessible. And if there's any questions or anything like that, email Ken, as Dr. Rick says. No,
there's the love.
You can email the office or give us a call. If you need feast information or anything like that, we can do to help. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Was it 903-561-7070? Is that right?
That's it.
That's been the number for Tyler for 100 years, it feels like. I remember Garner Ted saying that that was Mark saying that in the end of the videos, or during the midway point, he'd say that.
Mm-hmm.
We have a feast site in Branson, in what's the name of that place in Kentucky again?
Green Turtle Bay,
Myrtle Beach. We have Panama City Beach, and out west in and I just had a brain fade.
Lake Tahoe.
Lake Tahoe. There we go.
Yeah.
Those
Kings
are the ones.
Beach,
We
California.
also, there's one in England still, I believe.
Yeah, Kendall, Cumbria, and in
Australia,
and close to Sydney in Australia. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yep. We don't have anything in the northern part of the United States because there's not many of us up here, but plenty of places if you can get deeper into the country. So.
By the way, Ken, would you play our music so we can tell us about one prophetic thing I want to kick around for a second.
I still like that.
Nothing.
Okay, you all might know they had a giant military parade that was planned, and if you want to call it the axis of evil, it depends on your perspective. China, Russia, North Korea, soldiers were in marching, and boy, those Chinese soldiers look really disciplined.
Mhm.
Boy, they must be tough on them if they get out of step. I mean, I never. Anyway, and India was there. India wasn't a total participant, but and India's kind of playing both sides to some extent, but they're still in it, in BRICS and all. So there may be one prophetic thing. You know, in the very end of the book of Revelation, it talks about this army from the north and the east that worries the beast. I'm sure it'll bounce around and it won't be right away, but could an alliance between China, Korea, and maybe a few other nations in that area and India form a gigantic army?
It would be big.
Mhm.
Because probably China may have 1 billion people. India has what, is it 1.7 billion or some number like that?
They have surpassed China. I don't know
Yeah.
the exact number right now. I think their demographics look some better as well. You know, China's aging pretty rapidly, so
Yeah, they
There's
don't
that.
have any. They didn't have any females. How long is that? I mean, that's something to consider.
Yeah.
They've got a country full of men, and they killed off all their females for like 30, 40 years running there. It was a long time.
Not smart.
Yeah,
not
not too
smart.
bright. And now, I mean, I don't know, that has all kinds of implications because
Now they can't talk people into having kids again. You know,
No.
they're trying to incentivize it. Yeah, they made it 2 kids, then they made it you can have 3. Then they're like, we'll pay you, just have some
Have a
kids,
Yeah.
kid.
please.
How do nobody
Yeah.
have any?
Yeah.
But shortage of women is a big deal.
Many kids if you don't have any women.
By the way,
Be quiet though.
what happened was the abortion thing. When they were told, well, you're going to have to abort all the babies except that one, people, and I say this, they naturally aborted the girls disproportionately. And that really hurt them. But do you know a little bit of that happened in America? The Republicans had a bill about 15 years ago, I think, where they said it's against the law to abort a baby based on gender, race, and a few other things like that. And would you believe the Democrats filibustered and voted it down?
Of course, I believe
And I
it.
do believe that there are some, it's not big in America, but there's some people who want a particular gender and they'll abort the other one.
Oh yeah.
And when you start messing with nature, you're messing with the wrong thing.
Nothing.
Yeah, I've read
the
that the
left
Chinese
does-
believed
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
a son would take care of them as they aged. You know, if you only get one, you should have a son because he stays with your family. If you have a daughter, she's going to get married. She's going to go be part of somebody else's family, if you will. And so they wanted a son, you know, essentially to take care of him and carry on the name and all that. They could only have one. So pretty sick, though.
They've obviously never had a daughter that acts just like their dad, like me.
Yeah.
Actually,
That's
you
scary.
know what I think is true, and I could be wrong. Girls are more caring when they grow up than boys. So if you got a daughter, when you get old, she might be more valuable to you from a caretaker standpoint than a son. Anybody ever thought of that?
They should have.
Yeah.
They should have thought of a lot of things before they outlawed having, girls. I mean, I wonder how many people they had to kill for that.
Pretty sick.
Yeah, it is sick.
That's sickening.
And other,
But back on the prophetic side, I mean, this get together, you know, the military parade was to mark the anniversary of World War II, which Trump trolled them about, you know, mentioning the United
Mhm.
States is big, huge, massive, overwhelming contribution to that and their freedom. But this partnership, he did it on the heels of this Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, which was formed as the Soviet Union fell apart in order to kind of like rectify their borders and stuff like that, and then it kind of morphed into more of a broad, cooperative association. He had the leaders of more than 20 nations over there, a lot of Asian nations. The president of Iran was there. Lukashenko from Belarus was there. Even the guy from Hungary, I believe, was there. He's not so bad. He's very conservative. He's EU skeptic and all that. Viktor Orban. I could be mistaken in that, but I believe that he was there. And not everybody obviously wanted to stay over and be seen at the parade, if you will. Kim Jong-un, on the other hand, was not at the meeting, but he was there for the military parade. But that's just a thumb in the eye of the West, and really they're setting up they're wanting to set up a counterweight to the United States influence and their European allies. And if we think of it in the terms of the time of Jacob's trouble that's coming at the end, we don't know how exactly it gets from here to there, but that's why we watch and we pay attention to these things, because if they were doing nothing, if they weren't flexing really, really hard by having all those guys together, by showing off strategic nuclear weapons and all these other advancements and things that they've pulled off, and sure, the Chinese have copied a lot of stuff, but they've really run with it as well. And we talk in open terms now about the potential for conflict, and can the United States keep it up on two fronts? That's part of the push behind getting Europe to pull there to contribute to NATO appropriately, because hey, if we got to face these guys on there and in with Taiwan at the same time, we're getting stretched pretty thin. So it's the United States is taking it seriously. If you think a lot of what Donald Trump has done is not getting us less dependent on people who are potentially our enemies, and moving the economy towards weaning itself off of the outside influence, and especially in terms of things that we need in our supply chains and these critical rare earths and all this other stuff, it absolutely is. And whether or not war is the goal, like it is putting us on a footing to accomplish just that.
And it's a good thing. I even like going back to the old name. They used to have the War Department.
Yeah.
War sounds more offensive and aggressive and something to fear. You want your enemies to fear you.
Yes.
Yeah, he's been talking about that. You wonder if it's coincidental that he does it, the same week they have their big parade, their big show over there.
Nothing's coincidental with Trump.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Trump is always looking for a way to play him. I mean, he's just...
And even when they blew up that drug boat, I suppose they probably could have interdicted it. It might have been a little risky, could have lost some men. I'm not saying easy to interdict it, but my guess is he wanted to send a message.
Definitely.
And I hope
all of the verbiage coming out of the White House and people that are in the administration about Maduro being not being a legitimate leader and rather being the head of a narcotics cartel. What kind of message does that send? If everybody in the administration is now referring to him specifically in these terms, they increased the bounty on his head. Now they're fairly well surrounded by our advanced warships and things like that. It kind of has the vibe like you drop the bomb on me. No, baby. No, maybe not as fun, but it sort of gives you like that vibe. Maybe they're setting the stage for something more drastic. I don't know.
It'd be nice if they could get him out of power. I think because their economy, so I think he has turned to being a drug kingpin, because their economy, well, you all might know that they used to be the most prosperous country in Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
But then the oil market, that was the only thing they had going. The oil prices went down. And anyway, communism economically is just a drag. It doesn't work. With his economy dragging, a lot of people getting themselves and their money out of there, he's turned to drugs. And apparently they have this horrible drug gang. I can't even pronounce the name. It's weird.
Yeah, when your country turns to eating zoo animals, it's pretty much hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Well,
and so he's turned to drugs to make extra money. I think he really is a drug kingpin. In other words, they're not just a narco state, a state that's kind of frightened and captured by drug gangs. They're in cooperation with drug gangs.
Hey, $50 million is a lot of money, though. If somebody turns on him and gets him out of there, turns him over to the United States, that's a pretty big inducement. Even people, you think about that mindset and these kind of cartel, look at what people are doing for money already. And if that's not a temptation to someone, I would be surprised.
Well, I hope they can get him out and his major lieutenants, because I think it's the problem with communism. You can vote them in, but you cannot vote them out.
Yeah.
Too bad G. Gordon Liddy still isn't around. He'd have went in there and got him for 50 mil.
Well, prophetically, I don't know. I think it would be a good thing, at least in the short run, if America could run our hemisphere with minimal communist spread. And even getting Castro out would be a good thing, too. Both things are theoretical. I'm told the people in Cuba aren't happy either, for the same kind of reasons.
Well, how could they be?
It's a police state, so everybody's afraid, but they're not happy either.
Yeah.
Cuba C, anyway.
Yeah. It's getting very interesting out there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And one thing, Trump is moving so fast, there's never a dull moment.
I know it was a coincidence, but I listened to an old Garner Ted sermon this week called "The Stone of Scone," and it was kind of fitting for the times we're in now to listen to that. It was quite interesting. It's also on the website. Also,
would you say
GTA's website?
You think this might be America's last hurrah before our downturn?
I'm
not saying I know how long the hurrah will last, but is that a possibility?
I mean, everybody wants to kill this country. Its own citizens, the entire left of the country they'll burn it down rather than have all their efforts to destroy it turn around. Most of the countries, also, most of Europe wants us shut down. They don't know any better that they could cause their own demise, and obviously all Asia and Russia would like to see this country fall, but we're going against a lot. Right now we have an odd situation with a very strong leader that just by his will keeps things going the way they are now. I don't know if what's his name can pull off the same thing after he's out of office, but JD Vance, but we'll see. Maybe we get another. I just want to I just want to be able to retire. I don't want to have to be
until you retire. Right?
I want to have it easy for a couple years before the whole system comes crashing down.
I really feel like Trump has been so drastic in many ways this time around, and taking such strong action, even with our allies and trading partners, to try to generate government revenue so our debt doesn't get completely out of hand, cut our expenditures, do all these other things to isolate and put our enemies in a tough spot to make deals that are beneficial, or at least help out the United States is taking action before it is too late, because what we've been seeing for years and years and years is apathy and just a slide into overwhelming debt and a slide into overwhelming social problems and all this, communistic, like really over the top, decadent liberal stuff, like taking hold and taking root and, increasing and increasing and increasing. It's when everything's kind of okay, it's hard to, pull yourself out of it to make really serious cuts and changes that need to be made. But we need serious cuts and changes in our government and expenditures and in what we fund, socially, in our trade deals. I mean, he gets lambasted about the reciprocal tariff thing, but it's very much true. It's very much true. the kind of deals and the advantage that the United States has been taken of, and everybody's been okay with that because it's been good for our business in a certain way. But this can't go on forever. Things have gotten too far, and we find ourselves virtually dependent. He's having to be very careful even in the way that he confronts China, because it is a very big deal. We are that wrapped up with them at this point in time, which is it's not really a good position to be in. So I feel like this is a push to do something to keep the United States in the role that it's been in before it is too late.
Yep, that's a good assessment.
And I hope you get to retire, Ken. I hope it's real great.
Someday, man. Someday.
Father, they're kicking people off Social Security and some other programs who don't belong. Actually, is a way of trying to preserve those programs. I know the media was, so many people have no longer on this program, and this is horrible. But I'm assuming they're not making a lot of mistakes. I heard that there was a whole bunch of people who were over 120 years on Social Security. You know that nobody is that old, not in America at least. It's a scam. But how many? It was thousands. I couldn't believe the number of scams on Social Security that they discovered.
Oh, and that's just probably the tip of the iceberg. There's so much scams. You know something that's interesting. You notice how much trouble the Democrat Party is in since USAID has shut its doors. How much they're in trouble financially, and a lot of their subordinates and their projects have just dried up because USAID is gone.
They lost their piggy bank.
You betcha. And that's why they're screaming so loud. And I love it.
Yep.
Well,
all I can say is I still say pray for Trump, pray for America, pray for the Church of God. You might reverse the order, but whatever you want to do. But this could still be our last great hurrah. And who knows how things could go if God continues to bless America. And by the way, I know that I heard this morning, there's some stock market people say, we're going to have an economic downturn because of, I don't know, trade problems with China and other things that can't be worked out. And they're kind of doom and gloom. But I almost think some people want the stock market to collapse. They want our economy to fail.
Of course they do.
And they're doomsday preaching to encourage people to not invest in businesses, to not expand. But right now, it looks like in the next 2 years, a lot more manufacturing is coming to America.
Yep. And for now, at least for now, they're promising it. They're pledging all this money. We'll see if it ends up here after Trump's gone. We just need to keep going what's going if we can. The left will throw a wrench into it. They will try to shut it down. They will lie. They will cheat. They will steal whatever they can do to stop this locomotive from leaving their leftist station. They don't like that, but hopefully we can. Trump does enough in the next 3. It's been less than a year, and he's already busted their stuff up so badly. It's just beautiful to watch. And I think he's got a couple other things up his sleeves that may shock some people, but we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, it's a good start, and we got 3 more years of it, God willing, and maybe we will have a country left that's that we can save. We'll see.
And not a world war.
And not at a war. Yes,
I'd
rather not go that route if I could, because it's hard to retire when missiles are falling on you. And
you're gonna get drafted, Ken.
Actually, you'd be kind of permanently retired at that point, but I don't want to go that route. I want to get up, go out to my wood shop, when I feel like it, take a nap in the afternoon. That's what I want to do. I've worked for over 40 years for this.
Well, anyway, God bless all of you, and thank everybody for watching. And I guess we'll see you all next week.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
We're happy you could make it, and so glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we have to say goodbye.